What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down, take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching storyline and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about the final days of Superman. This was a very important story arc, and the reason why because we saw the death of the new 52 Superman. Back in the year 2011, DC decided to get rid of their old universe to do a complete reboot. Well, honestly, not a complete reboot, but most of the characters were rebooted. Unfortunately, so was Superman. Now, with that being said, after 5 years of trying to tell interesting storylines of this character, hoping the fans would love this new version of Superman, fans honestly did not care much about the new 52 Superman. And so in the year 2016, DC realized it was time for them to go ahead and get rid of their, new version of Superman and bring back the old version. But the thing was, they had to make sure the new version was long gone. And so they decided to kill him off. Now, before this storyline right here, there were 3 different story arcs that did affect Clark in different kind of ways that led to the idea of him dying in this storyline right here. And so this is the final days of Superman, the new 52 Superman. I do hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're going to cover Superman, the final days of Superman. This was technically the final story, the last story for New 52 Superman in DC Comics. Let me explain. So back in the year 2011, DC felt like it was time for a reboot. So all their different books were technically canceled and we got a reboot, which was the New 52. Now, it was not a complete reboot, but most of the characters were rebooted. Unfortunately, one of those characters was Superman. Now, here's the thing, because even though we did get a new origin for the character, and we did get some very interesting storylines for this new Superman, unfortunately, his hardcore fans were not happy with the idea of what they were doing with their favorite hero. And so by the tail end of the new 52, you could tell that DC realized they made a huge mistake. And so they begun the process of trying to remove this version of Superman and bring back the pre-New 52 Superman, the one from the universe they had basically stopped, got rid of for the New 52 universe. And so the last couple storylines that we had covered were really the idea of DC saying, yeah, we have to get rid of this character and bring back the one that fans care for more. And so DC realized they had to kill off this character as a way to clear a path for the one that fans care for more to come back. And so they gave us 3 different storylines that begun the process of killing off Superman. Now, we only covered 2 of the 3 storylines. The first one was Darkseid War. Now, when it came to Darkseid War, Superman was affected by the solar energy of Apocalypse, and when it came to the solar energy, it kind of damaged his cells. And that did even more harm later on when it came to the Truth Arc. In the Truth Arc, Clark Kent was powerless, and he was trying to find different ways to get his powers back. But unfortunately, he locked himself up inside a cage that was full of kryptonite, and he was hoping the kryptonite would technically help him regain his powers. It did, but it also damaged his cells as well. Now, there was a third storyline, but I'm not going to focus on that right now. Either way, you have Clark Kent realize that after those different events, he's now dying, and he's inside the Fortress of Solitude for a good period of time, running different kinds of tests. And with these tests, they all say the same thing. Clark Kent, Kal-El, you are going to die. Unfortunately, this is your end. There is nothing that we can do to save your life. Now, Clark Kent is not really upset about the idea of dying. He's really more upset about the idea that he will no longer be around to help protect this world. He will no longer be around to help lead the human race into a better direction. But then he realized it's time for him to inform the people that he cares for the most, to tell them that he is dying. We did have to jump over to China. Now, when we do, we actually pick up with a character known as Dr. Omen. Now, when it comes to Dr. Omen, she's currently at her base of operations, but she is trying to hack into the computer system of the Fortress of Solitude. Now, this is not an easy thing to do, because when it comes to the Fortress of Solitude, you are talking about the idea of some advanced tech that came from Krypton. Either way though, she was able to hack into the system, and she does begin the process of trying to collect some data from the actual system. But unfortunately for her, you have Clark Kent being able to close the breach and being able to say, okay, everything should be good now. Nobody else should be able to hack into our systems. And so then you have Clark and Crypto leave to go save the world, but to also see his loved ones as well. Now, the first person he goes to see is Lana Lang. Now, this makes a lot of sense because one, they're best friends, but two, this was the first woman that he fell in love with. Now, even though he was unable to be with her, they stayed as close friends, and he was there for her no matter what, and she was always there for him no matter what. And she also knows that Clark Kent is Superman. And so at first, it seems like two characters who are just talking to one another and going down, old memories. But unfortunately, she didn't realize that Clark is not telling her something at all. And that is when Clark tells her he's dying. Now, when he does die, he's hoping that she'll be able to bury him right next to his parents. Because remember, in the New 52, the Kents died when Clark was 16 years old. And so it's him asking Lana, can you please make sure that I am buried alongside with my family? And she says yes, but she still cannot believe about the idea that her best friend is going to die. Now, getting back over to Dr. Omen very quickly, we do see her currently walking into a room where she has somebody or some kind of thing trapped inside some kind of container. But she does plan on to release this thing or person into the world. But unfortunately, we have no idea who this person could possibly be. We did pick up with some random guy who is currently trying to go home. Now, here's the thing. This guy is actually wanted by the police right now. He has a warrant out for his arrest. And so you have this cop try his best to arrest the guy, but unfortunately, the cop couldn't do anything at all. The guy got away. Now, this random guy does try his best to use his car as a way to get far away from the cop. Unfortunately, out of nowhere, a random light comes out of the sky and crashes into his car and sends him in the car off the bridge, and they crash somewhere else. Now, you do have a young couple get out of their car to make sure that he is okay. And then he gets out of the car unharmed, but then he releases a huge amount of solar energy, and he says that he is Superman. But getting back over to Clark, you have Clark going over to the next person that he wants to tell about the idea that he is dying. And we kind of find out that person is going to be Lois Lane. Now remember, when it came to the New 52, DC really wanted Clark to not be with Lois at all, because this is a new universe. He needs new love interests. And so they gave Clark over to Diana, Wonder Woman. And so when it came to Clark and Lois, they were just two best friends, and that is it. But she also was the one who told the entire world that Clark Kent was Superman back in the Truth arc. But this is Clark telling Lois, hey, I'm dying. And so as we jump into the next chapter, we do pick up with Superman going over to Gotham City. And of course, you know why. To tell Batman that he is dying. Because by this point in the New 52, Batman and Superman were very close friends. And so it would make a lot of sense for Clark to tell his best friend that he is dying. Now, with that being said, when he does arrive in Gotham, you have Batman currently fighting against a range of different kinds of super villains. Now, when it comes to these different kinds of villains, unfortunately, they're not very important for the overall storyline. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to spend any kind of time talking about them. Just know that Batman is able to hold his own against these guys until you have Clark step in and take them all out. And that is when Batman realized, if Clark came to Gotham, handle my fight for me, but also being very serious, that means something important is about to happen and Clark and I need to talk. And so you have Clark take Batman back over to the Batcave. And so once you have our two heroes get back over to the Batcave, that is when you have Superman tell Batman that he is dying. Now, for Bruce, he's kind of like, hey, did you run the test? Did you use the Fortress of Solitude to run different kinds of tests on you to figure out if there could be a way to save your life? And you have Clark tell Bruce, he already did that. He ran the different kinds of tests. Every single test told him the same thing. Superman is going to die. And so for Bruce, it's kind of like, dang, I lost my parents, I lost other people, and now I'm going to lose my best friend. Now, you have Batman right now showing a strong face. He's trying to hide back all the emotions that he's currently feeling about the idea that Clark Kent is going to die. Now, you do have Clark ask Batman to do one thing for him, to find Supergirl. Because when Clark dies, Supergirl will technically be the sole survivor of Earth, or Krypton, sorry. And so he asks Bruce, I need you to find my cousin. If you do, please tell me so I can inform her, but also ask her to do me a favor. And you have Clark leave. Now, when he does leave, we see how much this affects Bruce Wayne. He shows a tad bit of anger, but also Alfred is also hurt as well because he realized that Bruce Wayne is hurting, losing his best friend, but he also liked Clark Kent as well. But getting back over to our random character that truly believes that he is Superman, we see him in Metropolis trying to be the hero of Metropolis, trying to be Superman. And matter of fact, when he is confronted by Jimmy Olsen, this man truly believes two things. One, he's Clark Kent, and two, he is Superman. And on top of that, he believes that he really knows Jimmy Olsen. Now, Jimmy realized this guy is wearing a Superman outfit, but this is not Clark. This is not Superman. And so you have our new mysterious character just fly away with the idea of him thinking that he is Clark Kent. But then we have to jump over to Superman and Batman. And when we do, you have Batman inform Superman that he was able to locate Supergirl. Now, before he is able to explain how he was able to find her and where she is at, well, that is the moment where our two heroes are attacked by 4 superpower beings. And these beings are representing the Chinese zodiac creatures. Or animals, sorry. And so now you have these 4 superpower beings coming after Superman and Batman. Now our two heroes are able to actually take down all 4 of them, except one of them was able to wound Superman, to draw a lot of blood from him, and that blood got on that person's hand. And that person is able to get away by teleporting away. Now the other 3 are still there. They have been defeated and captured by our two heroes. But the last one, well, like I said, he got away. Now when it comes to Superman, he realized that how easily it was for that creature to draw blood from him. which means that even though he is healing up, he is also dying at a faster rate because now he is less durable than he was originally. And so now he tells Batman, we have to find Supergirl now. And so as we jump into the third chapter, we kind of find out that Supergirl is being held inside National City in a base called the DEO Ghost Site 122. Now, when it comes to the DEO, they're better known as Department of Extra Normal Operations. Either way, apparently at first, it does look like Supergirl is being held against her will. And so you have Clark just going ham through this entire base to save his cousin. He basically breaks in like it's nothing, grabs his cousin, and he flies straight heck out of there. And once he does, he tries to wake her up so that they are able to have a conversation. Except you have Supergirl then tell Superman that she was not being held against her will. That matter of fact, she actually joined the DEO to find a way to get her powers back. Because we kind of find out by this point in the New 52, Supergirl was losing her powers, kind of like how Clark was in the Truth arc, except a tad bit different because the DEO was able to find a way to give her powers back, but unfortunately only in small bursts. And so every once in a while she was able to use her powers, but then it'll be on a time limit, and then she would have to go back to the DEO to get another burst of power until they were able to find a way to actually cure what's happening to her body that is blocking her powers from being there. Either way, she's very upset with the idea that Clark just took her out of the DEO. Now, before he is able to apologize, well, he begins to fall out of the sky. And that is the moment where you have Superman tell Supergirl that he is dying. But also, he tells her the favor that he asked to ask her. And that favor is, can you take over in protecting the world for me? Because I'm gone. And they're going to need somebody like us, somebody like you, to guide this race in the right direction, to make sure this world continues to get better rather than getting worse. Because it comes down to you to install hope. But then we have to jump back over to Dr. Omen. And this is where we kind of find out that the four beings we saw earlier that had attacked Superman and Batman, but one of them got away, well, they were all working for Dr. Omen. And we kind of find out she wanted the blood of Superman for some unknown reason. And so she cuts off the hand of the one that got away from Superman and Batman so that she could do a better job analyzing the blood of Superman. And the question is right now, what in the world is she going to do with that blood? But we have to shift back over to the guy we saw earlier who believes that he is Superman. And the reason why, because he arrived at the Daily Planet. And now he is walking around this place thinking that he is Clark Kent. But everybody else who knows Clark Kent knows that this guy right here is not Clark. But this man thinks, he really thinks that he is Clark Kent. Now here's the thing, because he does get very upset when he sees someone sitting in Clark's desk, because again, he believes that he is Clark, but he does not know that by this point in time, Clark Kent does not work at the Daily Planet, because back in the Truth arc, when Lois Lane told the entire world that Superman was Clark Kent, well, Perry White fired Clark because having Clark around could get other people hurt. But the thing is, this guy who thinks that he is Clark Kent apparently did not know that. And so you had this guy get very upset and begin to attack the guy who was sitting at Clark's desk. Now, luckily, Lois Lane was there and she was able to knock this guy out. And she tells Perry, hey, make some calls because this guy needs to be locked up very quickly. But getting back over to the Fortress of Solitude, we do pick up with Superman and Supergirl. And again, it's just Clark Kent giving her all the evidence to prove that yes, he is dying, but he also wants to make sure that she does promise to take up where he left off at, to make sure the world is protected, to help make this world a better place. Now, for Supergirl, for her, this is hard because in the New 52, her and Clark were never close, but it's now her realizing that she is going to be truthfully alone for good now, because now the only person she had left is dying. Now you have Clark saying, listen, even though I'll be dead, a part of me will still be part of the Fortress of Solitude. So just know, no matter what, I will always be there with you. Now, before we are able to jump into the next chapter, that is when Clark realized that somebody had arrived at the Fortress of Solitude. Somebody that he forgot to tell that he was dying. And of course, that would be Wonder Woman. And so as we dive into the fourth chapter, we do pick up with the conversation between Superman and Wonder Woman. Now, here's the thing, because remember, in the New 52, these two characters were dating one another. Now, in the middle of the Truth arc, Superman dumped Diana because he felt like he could no longer trust her. Either way, though, by this point, she still feels like she has the right to know that the man she loves is dying. And matter of fact, he even says, I was going to tell you, but the problem was for me is that I knew if I tell you, that was when I realized it's happening for real. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, how did Diana find out? Well, Batman told her. Now, it wasn't like Batman kind of said, hey, by the way, I'm going to tell you that Clark is dying. It was really more of Batman thinking that Clark told her first, because these two were madly in love with one another, to only find out that he did not tell her yet. But either way, you do have Diana tell Clark, we need to try something here. She wants to go over to the gods of her mythology. She wants Clark to run a few more tests to figure out if there is a possibility where they could save his life. But unfortunately, there's nothing that Clark nor her could do. But on top of that, Clark is ready to die. He's kind of like, listen, let's just stop. Matter of fact, let's spend the last few days here together and make these last few days here together some great ones, because I'm ready to go. And so that is the moment you have these two characters kiss one another. Now, you could technically say that this is Clark kind of forgiving Diana for what he did to her in the Truth arc, or what she did to him, in the Truth arc. But either way, these two have made up. But unfortunately, Clark is still going to die. And so while you have the two characters making out, they both get a call from Lois Lane and Steve Trevor about our friend, the other Superman, who was just taken out at the Daily Planet. And so you do have our heroes head over to Stryker Island. Now, when they do arrive, they realize or find out that there is another guy out there who is claiming to be Superman. And this guy truly does believe that he is Superman. Matter of fact, when he sees Clark Kent, he's kind of like, wait a second, who are you? You are an imposter. How dare you wear my family crest? And when it comes to Diana, he's very upset about the idea that she is with Clark, because he believes that he is the real Clark. And so seeing Diana with the real Clark Kent, he feels like he has been betrayed. Now, when it comes to our two heroes, they realize that the energy that he is releasing is very similar to Clark Kent's solar flare. And here's the thing, because Diana feels like when Clark Kent first used his solar flare, which was on Ulysses, back in the storyline called Superman, the Men of Tomorrow, she believes that possibly the energy that Clark released may have done something to someone, or possibly somebody was able to do something with the energy that you had released, Clark. Now, here's the thing, because when it came to Ulysses, he was a very strong character for Superman. But on top of that, he had the ability to manipulate any kind of energy. And so the question is right now, when Clark did release the solar flare, even though it was too much energy for Ulysses to control, there is still a possibility that he had manipulated the energy that Clark released when he did his solar flare. And so you have Clark saying, I need to talk to Ulysses, who is technically just one floor down. And so while you have Clark having a conversation with Ulysses, you have Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor continuing to watch the other Superman as he continues to freak out. But at the same time, he is getting stronger and stronger. And so sooner or later, he's going to be able to break out of his cell. The question is though, when? And the problem is that when could be very soon. Now, while you have Clark trying to ask Ulysses questions about his solar flare and the possibility that Ulysses did something with the energy of the solar flare, well, that is when the other Superman breaks free. And when he does break free, he shuts down both systems to both cells, his cell, but also Ulysses' cell. And so now Ulysses has the ability to fight against Clark now. Now, when it comes to Ulysses, you have to remember, he first appeared back in the storyline known as Superman, the Men of Tomorrow, where technically his origin is somewhat similar to Clark Kent. See, he was on Earth, but he was sent away to Dimension 4 because his parents felt like the Earth was technically doomed because of one of their projects. Now, he only came back to Earth 25 years later, but his goal was to sacrifice the lives of 6 million people as a way to save his adoptive world. The problem was, though, Clark got in the way of that plan, and so his adoptive world, well, technically got destroyed. And so he blames Clark for the death of his adoptive parents, but the entire world that he was on for 25 years. And so this is him trying to get revenge against Clark Kent. The problem is, though, Ulysses realized that Clark Kent is fighting back, but he's not as strong as he used to be. Because again, Clark Kent is dying. He is no longer at that power level that he always was at the very beginning of the New 52. Now, when it comes to our other Superman, he does fight against Diana, and he is able to go toe-to-toe with her to the point where he is able to get away. Now, once he does leave, the power does come back on, and of course, that means Ulysses' powers are technically canceled once again. They've been turned off, which does save the life of Superman. Now, when it comes to Ulysses, he's kind of like, listen, even though I want to kill off Superman, I just realized I don't have to because he is already dying. Sooner or later, he is going to die, which is just another way to confirm that Clark Kent is dying. These are his final days as Superman. And so this Now, by this point in our coverage, he already told everyone that's close to him that he is dying. He told Bruce, he told Supergirl, Lois, Lana, he even told the woman he loves the most, Wonder Woman, that he is dying. There is nothing that anybody can do to save his life. Now, before he does die, he has to handle one last situation. And that situation is really more about the idea that somebody else is running around thinking that he is Clark Kent, even though he is not. And matter of fact, he thinks that he is Superman. But the thing is, he's going around and having folks wondering what in the world is going on. Now, in our last video, he was captured and he was locked up, but unfortunately, he got out. And the question right now for our heroes is, who was that guy? How in the world did he gain his powers, and where in the world did he go? And so as we dive into today's story, we do pick up with Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, the Trinity. They're all working together. The close friends, or girlfriend, to Clark Kent are here to help him figure out what in the world is going on. Now, when it comes to our three heroes, they realize that when it came to the other Superman, that he does release a certain kind of energy, an energy that's very similar to Clark Kent's solar flare. Now, if you're new to Superman comics and you don't know what the solar flare is all about, let me explain. So the solar flare gives Clark Kent the ability to release a huge amount of energy. The thing is though, when he does release that energy, he is completely drained, which means that his cells have to recharge with solar energy so that he'll be able to be Superman. But apparently the other Superman somehow got affected by the first time Clark Kent used the solar flare. And so that could be the reason why Homeboy thinks that he is Clark Kent. Either way, they realize that Batman found a similar energy pattern coming from a place in China. And so you have our three heroes fly over there to see what in the world is going on. And so once you have our heroes land in China, they are confronted by the Great 10. Now, the Great 10 is a superhero team that works out of China. Basically, they are the superhero team that was made as a way to protect China. Now, with that being said, when it comes to the Great 10, they're very upset with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman about the idea that they came over into China without any kind of permission. And so for them, they feel like this is a huge violation, and it does lead into a huge battle. Now, this battle, it does last for a few pages until you have our heroes show the Great 10 they're not here to do any kind of harm to China. They're here for a very good reason. And they even give Superman the ability to explain why in the world they're here for. And so you have Clark say, listen, there's somebody else out there right now pretending to be me. They actually think they are me. But at the same time, that character is releasing a certain kind of energy that's somewhat similar to my energy, except when it came to Batman here, he had detected a similar energy pattern coming from your country from a particular place. And so we feel like somebody in your country is trying to create another Superman. And so you have the Great 10 realize that Clark is telling the truth, and they agree to help him, and matter of fact, take him to that location. So you have the Great 10 take our heroes over to a lab that belongs to Dr. Omen. Now remember, we saw her in our last video where she has been trying to work on collecting different kinds of samples of Superman for some unknown project. And so at first, when you have our heroes arrive in her lab, they automatically accuse her for doing something evil when it comes to the different kinds of samples of Superman. Now, she tells our heroes in the Great 10 that she is not doing anything at all until the Great 10 show off a hidden lab or a hidden part of her lab. And in that hidden part, we kind of find out that she is trying to create her own Superman. Now, here's the catch though, because this is not the Superman we saw in our last video that believed that he was Clark Kent and believed that he was Superman. That was somebody else, which means this one right here has never left the lab at all. Now, she tells us her Superman was made to kind of help protect China, because even though China does have the Great 10, she feels like it needs more heroes in this country as a way to protect this country, because other countries like America are getting more and more heroes, and it's time for China to catch up in that department. Now, with all that being said, she does release her Superman, but our heroes don't follow that one at all. And the reason why, because the Great 10 says, listen, this is a China problem. not an American problem. So we'll let you know once we have been able to capture this other Superman. But you guys need to go back to America and catch the other one that believes that it's you, Clark Kent. And so you have our heroes leave to hopefully find the other Superman. And speaking of the other Superman, of course, I'm talking about the one who believes that he's Clark Kent. Well, because he still believes that he is Clark Kent, well, homeboy flew over to where Lois Lane lives. And so when she goes outside her apartment, she realizes that he's there and he wants to talk to her because he believes that he's Clark Kent, they're best friends. But we have to remember, in the last video, he believed that Diana, Wonder Woman, had betrayed him because she was with the real Clark Kent, because he still believes that he's the real Clark Kent. Either way, he's now here with Lois Lane. And so as we jump into the second chapter, we do pick up with the Trinity right now heading back home to America after leaving China. Now, this is just another example of really Superman hanging out with his best friend Batman and also with the woman he loves, Wonder Woman. Now, unfortunately though, this is going to be another example of the idea that Clark Kent is dying because while he is flying back over to America with his friends and of course his girlfriend, well, he begins to fall out of the sky. Now, luckily for him, Batman was there to catch him and put him inside the bat wing. But this is just another example of the idea that his powers are going away. His body is affecting him in different kinds of ways. But either way, you have Batman and Diana both tell Clark, Batman is going to drive you back home to America. You're going to sit right here in the bat wing. We then jump over to Lois Lane in the other Superman, where you have the other Superman still believing that he is Clark Kent, that he is the real Clark Kent, the real Superman. Now for Lois, she already knows this is not Clark because one, he does not even look like Clark Kent or Superman. Either way, when it comes to Lois Lane, it's her trying to help this other Superman realize that technically he's not the real Superman. But on top of that, if you're gonna claim that you are, then why in the world are you leaving a trail of dead bodies? Why are you hurting innocent people? Because you're here claiming that you are Superman, but technically right now, you're not acting like him at all. Now, you do have this other Superman grab Lois and take her somewhere else. And this is gonna get very interesting. And so you have this other Superman and Lois Lane go over to somebody's house. Now, when they do arrive and they walk inside the house, well, we kind of find out the house belongs to the pre-new 52 Superman. Yes, you heard that right. The pre-new 52 Superman. See, thanks to the storyline known as Convergence, the pre-new 52 Superman and Lois Lane were given the ability to have the chance to live on a new Earth. Of course, that new Earth was the new 52 Earth. Now, when they had arrived, they realized that this Earth already had a Clark Kent and a Lois Lane. And so they had decided to technically stay hidden and build a family. And of course they did. They had a son, and that son would be Jonathan Kent. Now, here's the thing though, because when it comes to Jonathan, we already know he'll become Superboy down the road. Now, when it comes to our other Superman, the one's kind of crazy, well, we begin to see that his mind is beginning to break down because he has two different personalities that are currently battling against each other. Because remember, this other Superman was actually an ex-con who just got out of prison recently, but he had a warrant for his arrest. And so while he was trying to get away, he was hit with some kind of energy that made him believe that he was Superman. And so now these two different personalities are just battling against each other, making him go crazy to the point where he does attack the pre-new 52 Superman. It leads into an all-out battle between the two of them now. Now, getting back over to our Trinity, they begin to realize that some kind of energy has been picked up on Batman's computer. And so, of course, they realize that that energy that had just been detected must belong to only one person, the other Superman, the one's kind of having some mental issues. And so you do have our three heroes realize where they have to go next, and they begin to head over there right now to hopefully and finally stop him. And so when our heroes arrive, well, that is the moment our Clark Kent, the new 52 Clark Kent, meets the pre-new 52 Clark Kent. He cannot believe what he is seeing. And so you have the pre-new 52 Clark Kent tell the other one, hey, listen, I know this is confusing. We'll talk later. I have to go. And so he leaves. He grabs his Lois Lane, the pre-new 52 Lois Lane, and he grabs his son and they get the heck out of there, which leaves behind Batman, Wonder Woman, and the new 52 Superman to fight against, well, our mental issue Superman. And so as we dive into the third chapter, it's really more just, it's time to fight. It's time to battle. It's time to watch our new 52 Superman have his final battle and fight against this, well, other unique kind of Superman, and to hopefully bring him down for once and for all. Now, it's going to be Diana and Clark fighting against this other Superman, while you have Batman get Lois Lane the heck out of there and somewhere safe. But of course, it's going to be a very hard battle for our heroes, especially for Superman, because you're technically fighting against somebody else who's actually stronger than you are right now, because your body is, well, it's failing you. It's dying on you. But getting back over to the pre-new 52 Superman, we kind of find out that he took his Lois and their son Jonathan over to his Fortress of Solitude, somewhere that he built somewhere else in the world. Now here's the thing though, because apparently he didn't tell his Lois Lane that he had built this, but apparently he built this just in case it comes time for him to come out of the shadows and be another Superman in the new 52 Earth. Now, with that being said, this also begins the process of him and Lois telling their son Jonathan everything he needs to know, because it shows that he knows a tad bit about the idea of what he is and what his father is, but now it's time for him to learn everything about his family history. But getting back over to Superman and Wonder Woman, we currently see them trying their best to fight against this other Superman. And matter of fact, the guy is giving them one heck of a challenge. They're trying everything they can to hopefully bring him down once and for all. But unfortunately, he shows them how strong he truly is by giving them one heck of a challenge. It's 2 against 1, but unfortunately, he is just whooping their butt. But luckily, some reinforcements is about to come in very soon. And I'm talking about Supergirl, because she does get word that something is happening to her cousin. Now, something you have to remember, because she recently went over to the DEO to get some help with her powers, because we learned in the last video that her powers were technically going away, but she had no idea why. And so the DEO was able to give her kind of like bursts of power to use every once in a while to kind of help out with different kinds of situations until they were able to completely restore her powers back to 100%. Either way, she does get word that her cousin, the new 52 Clark Kent, is in a fight right now for his life. And so she leaves to go help out her cousin. Even though she's not back at full power just yet, she knows that her cousin is about to die possibly. And so when it comes to the final chapter, this is where we kind of find out the actual true origin of this other Superman. How in the world did he begin to believe that he was Superman? And you have the new 52 Clark tell us and him that listen very carefully. See, you were hit with solar flare energy of mine when I first was able to unlock that attack. And the thing is, that piece of energy that hit you was holding a piece of me. And so, of course, when it got absorbed by you, it made you begin to think that you were actually me. But in reality, you're not me at all. You're someone else. But the problem is that energy inside of you that was once part of me is now part of you, and it's making you believe that you are me. But the thing is, the other Superman is still not listening. But it's not his fault. His mind is trying to battle against two different personalities at once. And so, of course, he continues to fight against Superman. Now, luckily for Superman, Supergirl does arrive. But like I said earlier, Supergirl is still not at full power. So this other Superman is still able to go toe-to-toe with her. Technically, he is able to beat down on her. And Batman arrives as well, which honestly not gonna do that much either. So unfortunately, our heroes are struggling. Now you have Batman tell us we got a very huge problem here now. The energy inside this other Superman is beginning to get to the point where he is going to explode full of energy that could do some serious damage in this area. And so our heroes have to figure out a way to kind of make sure that one, he does not explode, but if he does, then two, find a way to contain it. But unfortunately, they don't have enough time to kind of sit there and think of a game plan to achieve those different goals. And so you have Clark just come out of nowhere. He grabs the guy and they fly out of space. Now for Clark, this is hard for him to do because let's not forget, his body is dying. His body is failing him right now, but he keeps flying out into space, trying to get this other Superman away before he explodes. But unfortunately, it seems like he might not be able to do it until you have the New 52 Superman arrive to help out. And with the two together, they are able to get out into space, except you have the new 52 Clark hit the New 52 Clark back down to Earth. He said, listen, I'm going to die, but the world still needs you. The world still needs a Superman. And so I say it's going to be you. And he smacks down the New 52 Superman. And as soon as he does that, the other one, the one that is going crazy, he explodes. But the New 52 Superman was able to absorb all of that energy to save the world from being hit by that blast. And then he falls back down to the earth. And so this leads into the final moment for the New 52 Superman. You got Batman there, you got Wonder Woman, you got Lois and Lana, Supergirl, Diana, even the New 52 Superman is there to say their goodbye to Clark Kent, the New 52 Clark Kent, because now he is going to die. He absorbed all those different kinds of energies from Darkseid War, from the Truth Arc, and even now that technically his body cannot contain itself anymore. And so he says his goodbyes to every single one of them to let them know that he loves them, he cares for them, and he'll miss them. And he dies right then and there in front of them all. And this is where we say goodbye to the New 52 Superman. But the story's not done just yet, because then you have the world wonder, okay, what's next? Because now the world have lost their hero. They have lost their Superman. So what can they do next? And that's the thing. What can they do? Because now they lost their hero. But we have to remember, we still have the New 52 Superman. But is the world really ready for him to take over? But on top of that, what about China? Because they released their Superman. There are so many questions left out there to be answered. And of course, they do get answered in DC Rebirth. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.